as we discovered, the things that we had been talking about before have taken place a long time ago, and they have been in our society over a long period of time. It's wonderful to learn about things in books, but it is more important to see the effects of what has happened in our society today. I was very fortunate a couple of weeks ago to meet a young man by the name of David Saucedo at a Tea Party Express convention. And David and I began to talk, and I realized that David was a result of the school system that had been put in place. David's story is fascinating. David, thank you so much for joining me today. And why don't you tell everyone a little bit about your history so that they understand where we're coming from?
Well, I grew up in low-income communities in and around Central Texas my whole life. My family was on food stamps, Medicaid, a lot of drugs, alcoholism, pretty much the definition of broken communities, broken families, the things that you see in low-income communities. Growing up in that, of course, I got into the entertainment. The music that I listened to was filled with aggravation, violence, drug use, all the things that go against a healthy lifestyle. And I grew up listening to that kind of stuff. Going to school, you know, I don't really remember learning too much to help me escape that lifestyle in school. And so before I finished school, I ended up dropping out. I went to prison for breaking into a house when I was a teenager. I spent 3 years of my life in prison. And in prison, I began to hear a bunch of things. I was exposed to a lot of Muslim ideology. I was exposed to a lot of conspiracy theories about Illuminati, about one world government, a whole lot of things that I didn't really, you know, I kind of brushed it off. I was like, nah, you know, this is just crazy stuff. So when I got out of prison, I met my wife, fell in love, got married in September of 2007. I began going to church, and you know, when I started learning about God's plan for my life, the wisdom in the Bible, and living a Christian lifestyle, my life began to get better and better. I mean, I started learning how to be a husband, learning how to be a father, learning how to be a friend, a brother, and just enriching my life spiritually, physically, in every way that you can think of. Well, in 2009, I ran into the Waco Tea Party. They were protesting in downtown Waco, and when I met them, immediately I was very curious to find out what they were protesting against. I'd never seen a real protest, and so when I went up to them, I started asking questions, about what they were mad about, and they started answering questions. I think the most significant thing that took place with meeting the Waco Tea Party is them helping me to understand local government, state government, national government, where it all comes from, the history of the United States, how you can actually participate in the system, things that the education system didn't teach me. I didn't learn any of these things from the public school system. So all of this information was new to me, and I was very excited about getting involved and making a difference, because I always had a heart to do something good. I just never felt that I could do something to make a difference. And so as I volunteered and became a part of the Waco Tea Party, I wrote some music. I wrote a song called Freedom, and when I shared that with the Waco Tea Party, they shared it with the Tea Party Express and actually got me a spot on the Tea Party Express to perform when they stopped in Waco. Well, from that point, I started traveling the nation with the Tea Party Express. I've been all over the country sharing my music and making a difference. So that's a very quick testimony.
Well, you said a lot of things, David, and one of the things that I've been saying all along is the lack of education in the roots and the history of our country. I found that when I started teaching, one of the things that we were instructed to do was not talk about our founding fathers, not talk about the principles of individualism, and to put kids in groups and to group them, so that I would imagine your education in Texas was not far different from the education in New York. What of American history did you learn? Did you learn American history at all?
No, I think the most I learned about American history was we the people. I mean, just the term we the people. I heard George Washington cut a cherry tree down, but I didn't have, I wasn't taught, I wasn't given a good understanding of where freedom comes from, what it means to be an American, what the world was like before freedom came to this planet, how our founders expected us to keep freedom, expected us to work to keep freedom from being taken away from us, from central banking, from other governance, from people who do not like the idea of individual liberty and freedom. And this, it didn't just spring up people not liking individual liberty and freedom. They didn't like it when it first came to the planet, and and they began working against America from the very beginning. And I learned all of this because I've researched with Tea Partiers and conservatives and libertarians and people who care, people who are, they know that it's very important for us to understand our history, to know our history and to know how we got to where we are now, so that we don't go back to how it was before freedom came to the world.
Well, this is one of the most important things, because today, folks, if you take a look around the country and speak to young people, they're being taught about social justice. And do they really know what social justice is? I had a conversation with a young man, with a group of kids, and I said, what is social justice? And one of the kids raised their hands and said, oh, it's a new social network. I think maybe we should join it. Where do I go to join it? So a lot of the terminology that we have, the kids have no idea. And they're so easily led down so many wrong paths, and it's so easy for them to sign away their rights and freedoms because they don't know what they have. And this is exactly what we have been talking about, because part of Agenda 21, of which you are new to, this is something that you have just started learning about, part of that ideology is to not teach freedom. Children today, students today, are being taught that that the government gives you your freedom, not God, your creator. Who do they look at? They look at the government. 86% of the young people today believe that their rights come from the government, and that's totally in opposition to what is going on in reality. Now, you live in Waco, Texas. Can you tell everybody what Waco, Texas is, where you live, what it looks like?
Well, I mean, if you go to the city website, you'll see beautiful pictures of the bridge or Baylor University, or a lot of things downtown. But what you won't see is my community. I live in one of the lowest income communities in the city, and it's a place where there are many broken families. There's a whole lot of government dependency. The crime rate is it's higher than in other areas. The appearance of my community is it doesn't look as well as what you'll see on the city website, for sure. Looking at my neighborhood, you would think that, like our district attorney recently said, that it's just a gangland where crime happens and people are violent and hateful, and that's not actually true. I live in this community, and I work and volunteer and donate my own hard-earned money and work with my friends and neighbors. We're trying to do everything that we can to educate our kids, to develop our local businesses, to clean up the areas in our community. But the system that we live in, it just goes against that. You have government programs that they on the surface say they're here to help. They're here to help us have what we need to feed us and to do all these things. But if you look at the way they're designed, if an individual is on these government programs like food stamps, Medicaid, or government housing, if they begin to do for themselves, the government actually punishes them for that progress. If you live in government housing and you pay $50 a month for your government housing apartment, but you actually earn a few dollars more for that month. Let's say you earn $200 or $300, which is one trip to the grocery store extra, and you report that, then you're going to be charged extra money for the same crappy $50 apartment that you're living in. It's the same apartment, it's the same services, but they're charging you more because you're producing, you're actually making something happen. What really frustrates me about the way that my city governs our community is the fact that our leadership allows us to believe that we need the government to create jobs for us, to create prosperity, to give us opportunities, when that's just not true. Because of my involvement with the Tea Party, because of my involvement with conservatives, and the things that I've learned about world history, American history, and where this country comes from, I can see that we don't need government to create jobs for us. That's not the government's job. We can actually manufacture products and sell them. We can go out and create and prosper. We can plant a field and harvest. We can do for ourselves, but we've been conditioned to believe that we need either the city council's help or the government's help to do these things. And so that's one thing that I see as a result of these decades and decades of indoctrination and stepping away from the ideology of our founders that people should be free to prosper, to go out and apply their faculties to the natural resources of this world and prosper with their own God-given rights. But we've been lied to. We believe that there's a shortage of resources on this earth. We believe that we can't act outside of the government, and we're actually in a system now where when we do act outside of government, it almost don't make sense for us in the low-income areas to do it, because the provisions we've gotten accustomed to begin to be stripped away from us if we try to elevate our standard of living. And so it is very frustrating, but I have hope because we're working. This isn't a Republican thing. It's not a Democrat thing. It's not we don't divide and conquer like we were speaking about earlier. We don't want to divide and conquer. We want to unite and prosper. And so what we're doing is having meetings. We're coordinating committees where education committee, business development, economic development committee. We have infrastructure committee. We are doing in our community what the government should be, the local government should be focusing on. Our representatives should be focusing on how to prosper our community, but instead they get involved in the system, the status quo system of doing things, and it goes like it has for the last decade after decade after decade, where we sit in our poverty, we wait for the government to help us, and the help never comes.
One of the things that we had discussed earlier was a community project that your community was about to receive a grant for to build housing, and you got involved and were able to get the people to understand also within that area how they were taking away the rights and the properties of the people in the community. You were talking about how through and by bringing in these government programs, the new development, what did it do to your taxes? What did it do to your tax structure? So maybe you can share that also, because that's the way it starts. They go to communities like yours where people are paying whatever it is for taxes, introduce these fancy programs, and then what happens?
Well, the way it all came to my attention is a friend of mine gave me a flyer, and it said there was going to be a meeting for community organizing and community development, and he also sent me a 22-page report that was released by a nonprofit organization in my city. And so I looked at the 22-page report, I read it, and I seen community development, I seen business development, I seen all these things, but what I didn't see was people development. And so I immediately, when I went to the meeting that they hosted, when I got a chance to speak, I stood up and I said, look, I see that I'm not against developing the community. I'm not against developing business. What I am against is doing it in a way where the people are displaced by big business or big organizing or whatever you want to call it. If you come in and you build nice houses with HUD grants or with whatever kind of, it really doesn't matter where you get the money from. It becomes like the title of a book I heard about, When Helping Hurts. When, they come in saying that they want to help, but if you go and you build a fancy house and then you refurbish a house that, is reasonable, and then you tear down a crappier house, what you're doing is you're developing the community, but you're not developing the citizens, and therefore the property, because you built that nice house, the property taxes on this house over here and this house over here are going to go up. And that's what happened to me. I paid $784.84 in my taxes for 2010. Well, in 2011, I believe they voted to raise my property taxes. And like I said, I live in one of the lowest income communities. My taxes went up by $700. They doubled my property taxes with, I don't know how they calculated that, but somehow they doubled my property taxes. And then they just recently voted to raise those property taxes again. And so, I'm quickly coming to a point where monthly I'll be paying a mortgage on a house that I own. And, that is happening throughout the community. So to come in and develop properties and to develop in a way that it doesn't include the people of the community is frightening, because as those property taxes go up, people will either sell their properties for way less than what they'll be worth if they participated in the development, or they'll lose their properties by not being able to afford to pay those property taxes. And I don't want to see that happen. And so, reading that report, I see no effort to reach people that are in the community, teach people how to participate in being business owners instead of bringing investors in from Austin or Dallas or from wherever else. I want to be a leader in my community that goes and meets my neighbors, meets the people in my community, and talks to them about opportunity. Builds a place where we can educate our own children, teach our children how to do business, teach our children the history of this country, teach our children how they have a voice that can absolutely make a difference in the city level, state level, and national level, things that we're not learning about. And that's one thing that it really frustrates me.
David, it's a fantastic story, but the story isn't over. And I know that you are preparing to reach out to other young people and educate them. So why don't you tell everyone that what David, as an individual, not part of David the group who wound up in jail, but David the individual who has learned and is reaching out to other children and other youngsters and other young adults to help them understand that the government is not the answer.
Well, I recently quit my job to focus on my community full time. I traveled with the Tea Party Express. I sold music, and I made enough money to cover my bills up until next year. And so I stepped away from my full-time job, took a dramatic pay cut to focus on my community full time. And what we plan on doing is what I've already been doing, but on a larger scale. I already opened my home to kids in the community, give them a safe place to come hang out, a place to come and talk, come and learn, be a part of something productive instead of going down the street and be a part of something that's non-productive. Well, my ambitions as a community activist, I recently quit my job to go into working in my community full-time, is to focus on educating young people in my community. I want to begin immediately educating young people on how they can use their natural God-given gifts to prosper. Teach them how to do business, teach them how to learn, teach them whatever it is that they need need to learn to escape the life of poverty that so many people in our community struggle with. We want to create a manufacturing effort in our community to compete with the prices of goods that are sold on the shelves of Walmart. So manufacturing dust pans or door stoppers or any small products, toothbrush holders, we're going to begin doing that and teaching families how to produce. And then what I will do is use my national network of patriots that want to buy products made in America to sell these products and help people earn more money, help people prosper more than what the government can. We want to do life together, teach our children morality, absolutely have a better control on the entertainment that comes into our communities and directly or indirectly teaches our children how to behave, what to believe, how to act, how to treat others. We want to get a rein on that and stop these liars and these frauds in the entertainment industry from manipulating and deceiving our children. And we want to honor God with the blessings of liberty and freedom that He's graced us with. And when I say honor God, I mean teach children the beautiful, healthy principles of God and the Bible, and be a faith-based community that loves one another, cares for one another, and does better for the poor or downtrodden than what the government could ever dream of doing. And you know, we believe that the help will never come from the top down. It has to come, if it's ever going to be successful, from the bottom up, from the community up. And I want to change the way that we do leadership in the city by working with our neighbors and our friends and family and supporters from all around the country to do these things in Waco, Texas, but not stop there. Let us succeed in Waco, but then let us go to Detroit, to New York, to Los Angeles, to Miami. Let us go to areas all around the country and begin showing people the power of liberty, teaching people how to utilize the liberty we have to take action, the liberty we have to do for ourselves. Let us outdo the government, and let us put the government back in its place and shrink the government by asking less of it.
Well, David, we are honored to have you as an agenda, and it is a pleasure to know you. You've just spent a long part of your time listening to Agenda 21. You've discovered that our policies through Agenda 21 and the United Nations are based on lies, and those lies are being perpetrated throughout our country. You've listened to David, and you've heard his story, and you've seen the results of the implementation of these rules and regulations, and how they are harming not only people, but they are harming our communities as well. Now it is time for you to make a decision. Do you want to fix America and your community, or do you want to talk about fixing America and your community? If you want action, that's what we're about. We ask you please to go to agenda21today.com, join us, sign up for our newsletter, and look for the action plans that will be coming shortly as a result of what your education has become. The agendas believe in truth, education, conversation, and action. Because if we learn the truth and we become educated and we keep it to ourselves, it does not help anyone. What we have to do is become the purveyors of truth, become the citizen journalists that we can be, use every media possible, every medium possible to get this message to our fellow Americans. Because the only way that we can save anything is when we tell the truth. So join us, please. Go to agenda21today.com, fill out the information, get our newsletter, listen to our conference calls, and get involved. America is not going to be saved by anyone unless they are involved. And remember, victory is our only option. Thank you.